I've been thinking a lot lately, and look, things seem to be going well. We have the White House. By a lot of metrics, we're winning. So why does it still feel like we're losing ground? Or that every week there's something that just doesn't sit right? And I think I've landed on it. The single biggest problem in America right now isn't immigration or even the left. It's weakness. A total creeping weakness on both the individual and the institutional level that has infected everything, from our courts, our culture, to our government. People have stopped being willing to stand for anything that costs them something, and when a civilization stops producing people willing to pay a price, it stops being able to defend itself. And in some cases, it's not that the people don't stand for anything, because they do. It's just that they are standing for something that's handed to them, that's manufactured, something that has absolutely nothing to do with reality or how the world actually works. And the sad thing is, they don't even know it, because that's what cognitive warfare does. It fills you up with someone else's agenda and convinces you it was yours all along. And I was thinking about this because of something that happened in Congress this week. Supreme Court Justices Elena Kagan and Amy Coney Barrett testified before a House Appropriations Subcommittee to address the court's budget request. Barrett sat before the committee and used the moment to explain in detail how the threats against her and her family have personally affected her.
And those statistics sound abstract, but being on the receiving end of them is not. So I thought I would just share a little bit about how the threats have affected me and my family personally. They have required me to, or my children, to think about and see things that children should not have to see or think about. One example is when threats to my life were particularly intense a few years ago, around the time of the Dobbs leak. My security detail sent me home with a bulletproof vest, and I carried it into my house, put it into my bedroom, dropped it down on a table, turned around, and my 12-year-old son was standing in the doorway of my bedroom, and he wanted to know what it was and why I had it, and I didn't know how to respond, because maybe I lack imagination, but I didn't expect that performing this service was going to put me in the position of explaining to my children what a bulletproof vest was and why I had to wear one.
The threats against Supreme Court justices are real, they're criminal, and the left should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law for every single one of them. But do we really think that story, told publicly on camera before Congress, doesn't signal something to the people doing the threatening? Do you think it doesn't tell them their campaign of intimidation is working? Because it does. I mean, just compare how she ruled before these threats started happening and after. When you explain how scared you are in front of the whole country, you're not really building sympathy. You're making yourself even more of a target and handing your enemies a scoreboard. And given that Barrett was effectively the deciding vote on birthright citizenship, the timing of this particular emotional testimony is strange. Now, compare that to this.
Some people have been spreading the rumor that perhaps you're going to withdraw. What's Clarence Thomas going to do?
I'd rather die than withdraw. If they're gonna kill me, they're gonna kill me.
So you'd still like to serve on the Supreme Court?
I'd rather die than withdraw from the process. Not for the purpose of serving on the Supreme Court, but for the purpose of not being driven out of this process. I would not be scared. I don't like bullies. I've never run from bullies. I never cry uncle, and I'm not going to cry uncle today, whether I want to be on the Supreme Court or not.
What a difference, because it's not like Clarence Thomas was sitting in this cushy situation over there. He had his entire character assassinated during his confirmation hearings. He's had the left try to run him off the court for 30 plus years. So same left-wing intimidation machine, and his answer, come get me. That's the difference, not just in temperament, in understanding of what the moment requires. And hey, we miss the moment sometimes too, it seems. The conservative movement put Barrett on that court. We did that because we needed a woman because of optics, because for all the talk about knowing what a woman is, we apparently didn't know what a Supreme Court justice needs to be. Barrett was a DEI appointment dressed up in conservative clothing, and now we're watching the left use her own humanity against her, and it's working. Not because she's a bad person, she's probably perfectly delightful, but because she was put in a position that requires a particular kind, a special kind of resolve. And resolve is not distributed equally, regardless of what the egalitarians tell you. The price for that appointment is being paid right now in birthright citizenship and mail-in ballots, in every 5-4 decision. And I keep coming back to the same word for all of it: feminization. A wholesale feminization of American institutions because feelings have apparently become the primary operating system of power. The problem with a feminized culture, though, is that it's not just soft. It's easily manipulated. The left knows this. I mean, they've built an entire machine around it. You manufacture outrage, you film the moment it peaks, and suddenly the people who are supposed to be enforcing the law are the ones on the defensive. And do you wonder why these enforcement operations keep generating the maximum amount of chaos?
If you don't think this is fucked up, you don't know what it means to be an American. And every one of us should be angry right now in this moment and willing to stand up for our values, the values that have always made this country great. And anyone who's just letting these MAGA autocrats get away with this needs to fight or get out of the way. It's time for us to stop this. So if you're on your way to Maine right now, thank you. If you're standing up and fighting in your community, thank you. If you're doing everything you can to protect our values, thank you. But if you're someone who can do more, then we need to do more. We need to do more right now because lives are on the line. Lives are getting lost. Because
boy, what an angry little fella. Imagine showing a hint of this kind of passion when an illegal kills an American, but alas. This is Seth Moulton, a sitting congressman telling people to obstruct federal law enforcement. And then everyone acts shocked when enforcement operations turn volatile. You can't pour gasoline on a situation and then cry about the fire. But of course, we all know that's exactly what they're trying to do. And it worked. Well, sorta. DHS Secretary Mullen quietly issued a directive halting most ICE traffic stops nationwide without warning Trump. Just, we're pausing one of the most effective deportation tools we have because it looks bad. This all happened after 2 fatal ICE shootings took place within 6 days. Both men had final orders of removal, and both situations involved subjects attempting to flee or use a vehicle against officers during the enforcement. Go figure. The Maine Attorney General's office confirmed that one of the migrants, Juan Sebastian Guerrero, attempted to flee in his vehicle in the direction of the officer before he was shot. Yeah, I did not see that one coming. But anyway, Trump apparently found out watching the news, and within 24 hours he reversed it. Posting on Truth Social, we cannot give up one of ICE's most important and effective crime-fighting tools, the traffic stop. Once we do, we are playing right into the criminals' hands. Good, right call. But the fact that it happened at all, that DHS blinked without even telling the president, is exactly the weakness I'm talking about. It's not just individual people, it's the reflex to accommodate the mob baked into the system itself. ICE agents are now facing a 1,300% increase in vehicle ramming attacks during enforcement operations, and the first instinct was to pause traffic stops because I don't know, it looked bad on CNN. This is the weakness right there. You cannot give the mob a veto. You cannot run a country's immigration enforcement based on what cable news decides to do with the footage. And you cannot allow a pattern where every time an enforcement operation turns deadly because someone resisted, the response is to dial back enforcement. The smarter play, and this is what the administration is starting to do and needs to do a lot more of, is it's making enforcement so pervasive and so credible that confrontations become less necessary in the first place. So that might look like E-Verified that makes it impossible to work without status, benefits restrictions, banking pressure, employer audits, the kind of institutional squeeze that changes a calculation without requiring a street confrontation. Eisenhower approved this in 1954 with Operation Wetback, a combination of targeted enforcement and sheer credible threat. A significant number of people left on their own because they believed the full weight of the state was coming for them. Because the truth is, deportation is not a punishment. And actually, if you think about it, it might be the most generous thing we can do. Now, hear me out. The same people who spend their time telling us how third world countries are full of ancient wisdom, rich culture, beautiful communities, hardworking people who just want a better life. Those same people are losing their minds over the idea of sending those wonderful, culturally rich, community enriching people back to those wonderful, culturally rich communities. So, which is it? Because if the people are so great and the countries they come from are so great, then wouldn't sending them back be a form of restoration? Wouldn't it be like the ultimate act of giving back? You're returning your best people to their homeland and rebuilding the Banana Republic with exactly the talent that the Banana Republic apparently produced. Win-win, right? But no, apparently that's a human rights violation. So either the countries are great and the people belong there, or the countries are hellholes, which they are, that nobody should be forced to return to. In which case, maybe stop telling me how much wisdom and culture they have. You should not have people in a functioning country who take time out of their day to stand in front of a federal officer executing a lawful deportation order because they've been taught their whole lives that the law for some reason doesn't apply when your feelings say otherwise. And speaking of feelings, I need to tell you guys about something that popped up on my TikTok while I was doom scrolling at an unreasonable hour of the night. And stay with me because this is exactly what I've been talking about. This is the weakness, the suicidal empathy. This is what happens when you take years of radical feminist ideology and let it run unchecked. You don't get liberation, you get something that looks a lot more like cancer. A slow, quiet, ideological cancer that convinces you your feelings are a compass when they're actually a trap.
So this is part 2 of me answering your guys' questions in the comments. The reason we can't go to another country is because Afghan passports are just not strong enough. So I really like this comment because it reminded me of a time when I went to Chicago with friends. We took the wrong exit and we were immediately pulled over by police and we were told to leave the area because it was too dangerous. So yeah, do what you will with that info.
Oh, girl. As someone who has personally spent time on the south side of Chicago, granted, never made it to Kabul, maybe one day, but I honestly think you might be running into a little bit more trouble than just gangbangers over there. Anyway, meet Alex Sunny from Kentucky, who met a man on Snapchat, I think about 2 years ago, met him in person exactly once, and she is now moving permanently to Afghanistan to be with her one true love, under Taliban rule. How lovely, where women cannot travel without a male guardian, cannot show their faces in public, get an education, or, have a little thing called legal recourse in case things go sideways. But she went to Chicago and was fine, so it's all good. She's got it. All joking aside though, have you guys watched that 1991 movie called, I think it was Not Without My Daughter with Sally Field? It's about this American woman who marries an Iranian, all's well until he brings her and their daughter to Iran to meet his family, after which he basically takes his wife and daughter hostage. And yeah, they had to escape, not walk out the door like normal humans, escape through Turkey on foot to get out. Alex Sunny apparently filed this under travel inspiration, but I genuinely feel sad for her, I do, because she didn't get here on her own. Nobody wakes up one day and decides to move to Taliban-controlled Afghanistan for a Snapchat boyfriend or husband in a vacuum. This is the result of a slow, quiet drip of the sick leftist ideology that maybe started with some good intentions, I'm sure, but somehow ended up here at my feelings about a man that I met online are more valid than the lived reality of every woman currently living under the Taliban. And the cruelest part of all of this, of the ideology, of the cognitive warfare, of the you go girl culture run completely off the rails, is that it destroys your ability to tell the difference between someone who loves you and someone who is using you. Alex Sunny cannot tell the difference between a man who loves her and a man who is using her because she was never taught that those are different things. The ICE protesters cannot tell the difference between people who actually care about their communities and a political machine that is using their bodies as human shields in front of federal agents. And Amy Coney Barrett, who went through something genuinely awful because the left manufactured and amplified every threat against her on purpose, she cannot tell the difference between a culture that wants her to succeed and a mob that is using her pain to move her votes. They are all being used, and they think they are being loved. This is the power we're up against. A machine that is very good at making useful idiots feel like heroes. This is all the same refusal to accept that reality exists outside of what you feel about it. Same collapse of the kind of resolve and prudence that actually keeps people and civilizations alive and functioning. This isn't just a crisis of womanhood or of radical leftist indoctrination. It's a crisis of what it means to be American, of what it means to live in a country with rules, borders, institutions, and the key, and this is the key, the backbone to defend them. When you stop teaching people that reality exists outside of their feelings, this is what you get. And that's the reality check with Iulia.